So
Good, good. Okay, well, let's start. I am, of course, Ann Trinka, the curator of the West Coast version of Wild Tangents, and along with Caitlin Booth, who curated the East Coast version. This will be the last week of the show, and we'll probably take it down off the website, but I'll have the interviews up for a while so we can enjoy those. And I'm joined today by one of the artists, Deborah Hamon, and we have her work here on the screen. We're gonna show you some of her paintings while we're talking so you can get more of a glimpse. But maybe first, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself? I know you're originally from Australia, correct?
yeah, yes.
And how
And
long
I
have
don't know
you
if you'll
been
hear
in
the
California?
accent or not. I've been here for a long time. So I was born and raised in Australia, and I've been here since I came over to go to university. And then I've stayed, and my mother's American, so I actually have dual citizenship. So I've been here, um, too many years to count. I've been here longer now than I think, I don't know, 30 plus years now. So it's been a
Yeah,
while. Yeah.
yeah. And do you go back ever to visit?
I do go back. The last time I was there was so spring of 2019. Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah, last year. So it's uh, and that'll probably, we haven't been able to travel. My dad still lives there and he's getting older, and so that will probably be my first trip when I can travel again, will be to go see him. And I still have a lot of friends there. So yeah, I try. For a while when my daughter was super young, I didn't travel as much, but I try to get there every couple of years now. So
yeah, and you are quite a traveler, and you did your studies at UC Davis, correct?
So my graduate studies, yeah, I got my master's at UC Davis, and then I got my BFA at University of the Pacific. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed also you worked with Wayne Thiebaud as his teaching assistant.
Yeah,
That's
I was his, that was amazing to be his teaching assistant. And so I was very thrilled to get the opportunity. And he's still so inspiring. I mean, 100 years old right now and still painting. And I saw him, I actually missed this because I didn't know about it until after the fact, but there was a SF Mama David Park Zoom. And apparently I saw him like, on a Zoom chat on that. I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing.
I know, keeping
So
up with the times. I heard that was a great presentation, but I think it might be available later.
yeah, I'm hoping to see it. So yeah, I hope to be him when I'm 100 years old, still painting, and I think he was still playing tennis every week. So I'm hoping to still be
Wow.
out hiking and running and painting at 100. That would be great.
Well, what do you think you took from him, painting wise, or just his influence?
Well, I think from him, so it's just to be really honest about with yourself about what you're trying to do in your work,
Hmm.
and be humble. And I think those are. I mean, I didn't work closely with him in like a painting sense. He came into my studio and we talked a few times, but as his assistant, I think that his just work ethic and humbleness was something that I really took away. So yeah,
That's great.
and
Yeah,
you know
very
what? Maybe
inspiring.
there's some color influence. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna take a quick break here for a second just to make sure. Okay, we're good. And speaking about your work, were you a photographer to start out with, or?
I do both, right? So, excuse me. I was a painter to start out with, and then I was doing more figurative work, and so I was using my photography to take photos of the things I wanted to paint. And then I really kind of got into photography. And I mean, in undergraduate, I definitely took photography and did fine art photography. And actually, even uh, my husband had, when I first met him, he had a dark room at his parents' house. And so it was kind of like, oh yes, I'm going to go, hi, nice to see you. But yeah, can I go spend 8 hours at your parents' house?
Convenient.
Yeah. So I definitely have always had an interest in photography. But then painting was kind of the thing. And then for a while, what was happening with my painting is I was spending a really long time and working on these pieces. And I realized that I was wanting quicker, I don't know, like a quicker way of getting some ideas across. And so I started doing, at that point when I was painting, the photography was just as reference for my work. And then as I continued, I realized, oh, you know what? There's some things I can get from photography itself. So I started doing photography, and then I got really into that and did some projects on that. And then all of a sudden that painting draw came back, and I was like, oh, I really want to be painting. And so now I'm in the process of primarily using photography as a resource for inspiration. Yet I think like a photographer. So when I'm out, I'm always, even if it's just my cell phone, you know, I'm like always snapping photos. I like the light. I like see lots of different things, and I'm like, oh, I gotta, you know, photograph that. But my big camera, you know, you probably know as a photographer, it's like I use my cell phone a lot because I always have it. Whereas my big camera, I have to like when I go travel, I like to take it depending on what I'm doing, and then I'm using it all the time. But just around here, I tend to, the big camera is basically just to photograph my work.
Yeah, I mean, I've since the pandemic, you know, I started going out on these walks and just had my cell phone with me, and
Yeah.
I just really had fun just spontaneously reacting to things. But let me click through it. Well, let me show really quick, because I got to know your work through these paintings where you would use photographs, and this is your Truly Girls series. So I can see your evolution. Would you say in the past 2 years, though, it looks like you've been focusing on nature and
Yeah, more like, so if you go to 2016 to
yeah.
2018, that's kind of when I started to experiment away. So really,
Mhm.
like, yeah, in the last probably 4 years. And primarily like I was doing all of the work from the childhood girls, probably because I was like, when I first started the work, I was thinking about being a mother, and then I became a mother. And so I was doing a lot of work relating to the construction of identity, of you know, just growing up and my experience as a girl. And then here I have this daughter who is going to, you know, go through all these periods. And so I was doing that type of work. And then I got the opportunity to go to the Arctic on this amazing residency, the Arctic Circle. And I wanted to do a project where I could kind of work with children because I had that interest, but also with nature. And so I came up with the Polar Pom Pom Project. Yeah, and if you
Yeah.
go into photography and click on that, you can see some of that work. And so I was working on this project, and I was trying to connect children with the Arctic and talk about climate change. And so I'd go into classrooms and I'd talk to them about things that they can do to help the environment. And then the idea was to take these pom-poms up to the Arctic. And the reason with the pom-poms is my daughter used to really love pom-poms. And right when I was thinking about this project, they just looked like snowballs. And so I was thinking, oh, you know, the snow, the Arctic, like if I can get a kid to be interested in something, and the kids I were working with were like 3rd through 5th grade, and they're pretty interested in making pom-poms, most of them anyway, instead of like just being in school, right? So,
Yeah, that's
so I
fun.
was going into the classroom and talking to them about, oh, you know, here are the things you can do to help the environment, and just to think about it. And then I took them up to the Arctic and worked on this project. And then when I came back, I was doing, you know, more photography and trying to figure out, well, what kind of work do I want to do? I kind of had come to the end of my girl identity project in terms of painting. And so I started thinking, well, I want to do more things about nature. And so this was kind of a nice kind of transition into starting to experiment with painting. And at first I thought when I got back from the Arctic, I was going to do a lot of painting about the Arctic, but I ended up realizing that I didn't know how I wanted to to paint it because it was so beautiful and incredible that the photographs were all I wanted to do, and also the pom pom images planted there. I also took a lot of video, which I still have not fully edited, and so that is an ongoing project that at some point I will do. But I started shifting into painting and experimenting, and now years later, I kind of feel like going back into, using some of this Arctic imagery. I have a better sense of how I want to paint it. Like back then, I would have probably painted it more representationally, and I couldn't really enhance what I saw. Whereas now, the work is more about the feelings I have when I'm in a place. And so I think that I will have a better, like I've already, if you go back to the painting.
Yeah, I see how your style has changed and loosened up a
Yeah,
little and become more,
actually the 2019-2020 painting.
yeah, the new ones.
There's one I did that inspired from the Arctic, the sun and the ice right here. So that is now a way of getting into the ideas I want to say without like being realistic representational painting. So
Yeah, I mean, I can see your photographer's eye in this work, in that you're looking at how the light is coming through, um,
yeah.
the color, and yeah, definitely can see that. And let's get to this one here, which is the one of the ones we selected for the Wild Tangent show, Desert Bouquet. So it's different, for it's not an Arctic scene, but why don't you tell me a little bit about how this painting reflects your relationship with nature?
Yeah. So this one's interesting because what I've discovered that I like to do is I'm interested in working out small ideas um, about things that I want to do in a bigger format. So um, as I mentioned before, a lot of the things that I'm trying to do is to get the sense of a place or how I feel in a place and bring it back into the studio. So I just find that when I'm in nature, there's this like feeling of such aliveness, and I'm joyful, and um, I'm super inspired, and there's a sense of awe, and what I'm trying to do is bring some of that back into the studio and put it into my work, and often like with color relationships or line, there might be like a kind of these opticals, like sensory things so you're getting this kind of aliveness and energy in the work. And that's kind of my feeling of how I feel when I'm there. So I've got these grand ideas of like, of trying to bottle that feeling that I get when I'm in nature and put it into the work so that I can share that experience with somebody else. So the smaller, like this is a small piece. It's 14 by 18, which is really quite small for most of the work that I do. And what I often do is they're not really studies, but they're just, the smaller works are ideas of trying out either like a color palette or a type of mark. And then usually it will end up turning out into like a completed painting. And for this piece, I was thinking about, often when you're in nature, like say you're in the desert or something, you think it's barren, and it's a lot of people are like, like I love to go to really remote places where it's just really barren, as well as mountains, but like people are like, oh, it's so dry, and like what's there, and if you go start looking, I mean, there's so much there, right? As a photographer, there's like, pops of life, there's color, there's all this stuff. And so a lot of my work, yes, it's nature, but it's also kind of a metaphor for things that we experience in our, just as being part of human. And so like if you're thinking, oh, things are, nothing to do. It's like, there's no hope. It's sad or whatever. And then you see these little pops of light or inspiration. It just, it makes you think that there's hope. I just remember being like when we in the pandemic at the beginning, when we really couldn't drive to trails or anything, and we were supposed to just don't, you can leave the house for exercise, but don't drive anywhere. This was in the Bay Area. And so luckily I'm out, there's a place right outside where I could walk, and there's there's wetlands, and there's just so many birds, and they were so like joyful, and just hearing all this. And I was like, wow, like even when you're feeling really down, there's just any little thing out in nature will remind you. So this is kind of, I titled it Desert Bouquet, because it's kind of an offering of all the hope that you can get in nature. So,
Yeah, that's exactly.
and actually this piece inspired, so this was the one I did before. If you click onto it should be the next piece, is Pain and Glory. So if you click, it must be the one the other way, or go back to the, yeah, it's going to be the other way. Yeah. So, and this one, it's a big piece, but basically the other, the Desert Bouquet was I was kind of interested in the color palette and some of the mark making. And so this one followed up from that. So usually the smaller pieces inspire a larger piece, not necessarily in the content, sometimes in the content, sometimes in just the color palette, the mark making. And again, the same idea of pain and glory, that there might be a lot of hard things going on, but yet there can be so much beauty and glory and energy out in nature that you can find.
Yeah, I was, so I think you mentioned you were in Patagonia at the beginning of last year, and
yes.
I was actually in Joshua Tree and around the same time, and taking photos, and just, yeah, you're amazed that it can change overnight. In fact, it did. There was like complete sunshine the day before, and then I woke up and there was snow.
Yeah.
So nature just has its way of really taking you by surprise and offering things if you take the time to notice it. It's remarkable. So you're already working with nature and the emotional impact. How did you find that change during the pandemic, or increased?
It didn't really change for me. I think it just became even more of a solace for me. But I didn't really find that my relationship changed in terms of the way I approach my work. I think it was more that, now I'm staying put because I can't go anywhere like everybody else. And it became even more that thing that I was talking about, like trying to bring all those like feelings of when you're so alive, bringing it into the studio and keeping it there, and then being able to like extend that beyond the studio, right, in your everyday life, so that, if you're a bit down because of the pandemic, or the wildfires in Northern California, those kind of, that you just remember that, this will pass. You'll have a new a new chance to experience all the wonderful things that you have, and to just kind of be present, that in the sense that you can get everything you need by just not longing and expecting and wanting things, and just being okay with the way they are. And I think the difference is not so much in the way my work has changed, but in being patient and being more present. And I'm interested in the idea a lot of being present and mindfulness, but then actually living it out in reality when you can't get out, I think has become even more important.
That's interesting. So what I hear you saying is, like, during the pandemic, the work became a model for how to cope.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's interesting is my is my process, like not just the content of the work, but the process is also the way um, that I'm trying to model that. So even if I have all these ideas of what I want, you know, either in life or in the studio, you then have to deal with what's in front of you. So I might have these grand ideas in the studio and think, oh, it's going to be this certain way, whatever. But then in the reality, like if I'm open to what I'm seeing in front of me and being really present with it, it might go in a different direction,
Mhm.
and being okay with that and not trying to control it into what I thought. So I'm like, okay, so you know, in fact, if you want to go to maybe the longing painting, the recent painting that I did, the very first one on there, right there. So
Yeah.
this one, and I called it the longing, and that being a metaphor for so many things that we're longing for during the pandemic, or you know, just generally in life. But this painting, you know, I wanted it to be a certain way, and then I kept trying to make it this certain way, and then it was not behaving how I thought. And then all of a sudden what happens in my work is I like, even though I might have spent, you know, hours, days, weeks on like an area, finally I'm like, you know what, it's not working, I'm going to just go crazy. And when I get really like, I've decided that, okay, now I just have to let go. And it's usually those moments when you discover better things. And so if I keep reminding myself of that in life and on the canvas, it just becomes a much better thing. Like you know, the work becomes
I read
better.
your recent e-newsletter about this topic, and it
Yeah,
really hit home for me because I was like, yeah, you know, you can spend so much time wishing things were a different way and wishing you could be out traveling or doing things in person. But, you know, for a long time, I thought resilience was the main message about this last year, but acceptance, I think, is a really major
yeah,
lesson that we learned as well. And I think I see that in this piece.
yeah. And so I think that's, so I think that I'm becoming more focused on this idea, and I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or it's just helping me
Mhm.
get through the pandemic, but to really just be okay with the idea of not knowing,
Yeah.
uh, and embracing it all, and just getting through it with hope.
Yeah.
um, and looking for the bright spots, and seeing where it goes. I mean,
Great. Yeah, I think that's a common thread I've heard from a lot of the artists. And I wanted to ask you, like on the professional side, how you have found, I noticed you've done like 4 or 5 shows online
yeah.
in 2020. How did you find your professional life changing and adapting last year?
Well, so what's really interesting is because of the fact that my work was changing, um, I I went through a period, basically 2016, like I was showing my photographs more, and then as my painting was changing, you know, when you're really like my work really changed considerably from, you know, representational figurative work to what it's doing now. And I really didn't want to be showing it a lot because I wanted to have the time in the studio to, you know, just spend the time figuring out what it is that I want to do, as opposed to, you know, starting to try to show something and then people like that, but oh no, that's not what I want to do, and it works and it's all over the place. And so I think actually, you know, the goal for me was 2020 is the year that I was going to start showing this work. Then the pandemic hit. And at first I was like, oh, well, there goes that. But then I realized, well, you know what? No, I'm just going to adapt. So um, it actually, I think for me, the virtual was actually almost easier, especially because a lot of my work is large. And so I could show it virtually without having to spend the money to ship it places and do this and
Good
that.
point.
I've,
Yeah.
I've, I've kind of found that as being a good way of getting my work out to more people more quickly. So in that sense, it's been good. In another sense, I thought, oh, how am I going to connect with people as much? But I actually started taking this marketing class online, and it's been great. It's Bridget Maya, she's a gallerist, and it's called Art MBA. And just she's so inspiring. And one of the things was just start connecting with people, online. And it's probably one of the reasons I sent you an email, was just like, you know what, I'm not going to sit in my studio and worry about the fact that I can't get out and meet people. I'm going to just start connecting to people online. And then, just so the audience hears, we realized that we knew each other from a show 20 years ago or so. And
Right.
I didn't realize that at first when I sent you the email, and there was all these connections that I sent you with the email. I was like, oh, this and this and this. And then we were like, oh yeah, we had
We've
been,
actually, yeah, we're in the same place. And
yeah,
yeah, one of my mentors, Rennie Pritikin, he always said, it's just about showing up,
yeah,
as an artist. You just have to go to the openings, or in this case, put your work out there, make the connections, and you never know where it's going to lead. So that's great. I do want to keep this short enough to put it on YouTube. So
sure.
I just want to wrap up by asking, how are you feeling about the climate right now? And are you feeling hopeful, or more discouraged, or what are you entering 2021 with?
Are you talking about the like climate change or the political climate or what? Because I mean, I can talk to both. I'm always feeling hopeful, right? So in nature, I always feel hopeful. Politically, today is a great day. I'm feeling much more hopeful. Um, I'm hopeful in terms of climate change. There is so much to be done, but I'm also hopeful that the fact that a lot of people have turned to nature during the pandemic, that it is on people's mind a lot, that that things will actually happen because people realize how important, when you can't do all these other things, and that the one thing you can do still is go out in nature. I think that's a great thing. So I would say I always have hope. And so 2021, I'm hopeful in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So,
And we're ending with this piece, Ascension, which I think is appropriate. This is the other work that's in Wild Tangents. And I'll just say, you can go over to my page, which is antrinka.com, and still see the show up for a little while. And that's also where I'll post this video. So Deborah, just thank you so much for talking about your work with me and being
you're
willing to
welcome. I
do
mean, I could continue to talk forever for you. So I'm looking forward to for you to come to
well,
the
and maybe
studio.
we'll do a part two. And I know that
Yeah.
I owe you a conversation more, but this is just the beginning. So
Yeah. Thank you so
um,
much, Anne.
thank
I appreciate
you.
it.
All right. Well, we'll be in touch, and I'll see you soon.
Okay, great.